We still do not know the results from the presidential election, as many states remain too close to call. We are still waiting to see final results from Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina, all of which could shape the race. The votes continue to be counted as we speak. Late last night, President Trump falsely claimed victory in an address from the White House, saying he had won the election, which he has not. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is urging Americans to be patient as the votes continue to be counted.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop.
We feel good about where we are. We really do. I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted, every ballot is counted.
And for more on this, I want to bring in Lynda Tran and Matt Gorman. Lynda is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Matt is a former campaign aide to Mitt Romney and Jeb Bush and a Republican strategist. Welcome to both of you. Great to have you with us. Lynda, let me start with you. Obviously, we can't really play Monday morning quarterback yet. The election's not over. But talk about the historic nature of this election, if you will, and the voter turnout that we've seen. What does that say?
Tanya, I think the historic turnout that we've seen is definitely one of the big stories coming out of this cycle. We're anticipating somewhere around 157 million ballots cast when we finish the tallying. And what it tells us is that the American people are more engaged in the democratic process, small d democratic process this cycle than ever before. And it's no surprise given the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, economic concerns, and the millions of Americans who remain out of work. Clearly, Americans wanted to make sure that they had a say in the future of this country, and hopefully that's something that we see persist through future elections. As we often say, voting is a habit.
Right. And so, Matt, both candidates still have a path to the White House, including President Trump, of course, but he's continuing to undermine the vote counting process today. He falsely claimed that surprise ballot dumps were behind his narrowing lead in certain states. This, of course, is not true. What is the strategy from the president? Because he does need the votes to continue to be counted. I mean, if we were to stop now, he doesn't have enough electoral votes. So he clearly needs the counting to continue. What is the strategy?
Well, to your first point, his path is narrowing. As we see, there's hope that maybe Arizona could open up. Wisconsin now is going to be a recount, possibly, according to the Trump campaign. So his path is narrowing. Here's the conundrum if you're the Trump campaign, but also other Republicans, because down ballot Republicans in the Senate and the House had a very good night. And so if you're a Republican, it's hard to reconcile the fact that down ballot Republicans had a good night, and yet President Trump at the top of the ticket is claiming fraud. That doesn't make much sense, and it doesn't really give credence, certainly, to Trump's argument that there was fraud or misconduct when other Republicans did really well, just not him.
Right. So let's talk about some of these down ballot races, Lynda, because there are still some remaining states that are too close to call. But, it didn't look good for Democrats on the whole. Certainly the blue wave that a lot of them were predicting didn't happen. What's the takeaway from that, Lynda?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway, Tanya, is that this country is practically as split as we've ever seen it, and that trajectory has continued under the presidency of Donald Trump, and it's something that we can anticipate even in the event of a Joe Biden presidency in the coming years. I think what it says for my party in particular, but all across the board for all partisans, is that there's a disconnect. There are a lot of people who are feeling a lot of pain, and we've got to figure out a way to make this less of a polarized environment for everyone and more one that really helps people who are struggling a lot in this economy. I think there's a lot of work to do on both sides of the aisle.
It's interesting because even, in the wake of Black Lives Matter, some are suggesting that this may be the end of an identity politics, in that we've seen a lot of Latino voters and even some black male voters, sort of move maybe unexpectedly to Democrat observers to the Republican Party. So, Matt, does that tell you there's opportunity here for Republicans?
It could. Look, I think with every presidential election, especially every winning presidential election, they have their own unique coalition. Nothing like this is static. You can go from W. Bush to Obama to Trump the first time and maybe Biden now. Everyone has their own coalition. It does give possibly a blueprint or at least a way for the future that these people can be gettable, so to speak. That they shouldn't be written off. And quite frankly, if you had told me in 2017 that Trump would be getting the non-white voting percentage that he has, my jaw would hit the floor. And that was a huge difference in places like Florida. And that helped keep the margins down in places like Georgia, possibly. So in the aggregate, it could be a difference maker.
So, let's go back to the presidential race. Lynda, in the remaining states that are still too close to call, what does a path to the White House look like for Joe Biden?
I think the path to the White House is exactly where they had kept their laser focus over the last few weeks. We've talked a lot on this program and others about how much time Joe Biden was spending in Pennsylvania. We're watching the mail ballots get tallied today, especially from heavily Democratic areas, including Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And the numbers we're anticipating are going to trend very well for Joe Biden. So certainly if he gets Pennsylvania's 20 electoral college votes, that's basically it, game over. We also see that he's got a lead in Wisconsin and in Michigan, the two other states that, as we all know, were a huge part of Donald Trump winning the White House in 2016. And they're going to be nail biters to the very end. But I do think that ultimately those states will also go for Joe Biden.
And Matt, what about you? What does the remaining path to the White House look, not the remaining path, he's already there, but what does it look like for President Trump to stay where he is?
Well, first of all, Georgia is a must-win. He absolutely has to win Georgia right now, especially how the other states are looking, like Michigan and Wisconsin. He also obviously needs to keep Pennsylvania in his column. To Lynda's point, so the more urban centers are coming in now. He needs to hold the margins down there. There is a possibility. Don't close off all the paths with Arizona quite yet. It isn't a great chance, but there are some pathways there for him to claw back some votes. I right now think that's a better chance, quite frankly, than trying to flip a Michigan or a Wisconsin. Like I said, it's narrow, but possible.
Mm-hmm. So, Matt, obviously we've known that this could take some time. The results are still coming in. But based on what we know now, when do you think we could have final results or at least a fairly clear idea of who's getting those 270?
My guess, and again, this is just me speculating here, I think by the end of today or maybe very early tomorrow, Michigan, Wisconsin, that's the ball game, folks. So I think that could be a timeline for us.
Lynda, you think the same?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, the bigger questions we're going to be grappling with are actually more about the system writ large. Clearly, there's been a lot of discussion about mail-in ballots and that process. Of course, that's something that we've had in play in this country for a very long time. But I think the question on a lot of folks' mind is really about the Electoral College vote. By the time we tally all of the votes that have come in, both during the in-person early and mail ballot period and yesterday during Election Day, it's going to look like Joe Biden is ahead by a historic total vote margin of probably around 7 million votes. And, that's something that we're just going to need to contend with overall when you look at how close the Electoral College numbers probably will end up being.
It will be interesting to compare that popular vote with the Electoral College vote for sure. I mean, it's not very often in U.S. history that the president doesn't also win or come close to winning the popular vote. And if that continues to happen more frequently, I think you're right, Lynda, there will be a lot of people examining the Electoral College more carefully. But we've run out of time. Thanks to both of you, Lynda Tran and Matt Gorman. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.